My thanks to the members of Congress, the organizations that have arranged for this important and vital briefing, and my fellow speakers who are sharing their perspectives today. I am a professor of communication at Santa Clara University, as Rafiq mentioned, and I've been studying online Indian communities, particularly the Hindu right-wing online, for 2 decades now. And before that, I worked in the Indian internet industry as well. From 1998 to 2000, where I witnessed firsthand the emergence of what in the era of Facebook and Twitter has evolved into a bubbling cauldron of anti-minority hate. The recent revelations by Frances Haugen about Facebook strongly underscore the case that social media and online platforms share responsibility for the consequences of such hate in the Indian and other contexts, which consequences include physical violence and even murder. And as Rafiq mentioned, I will speak about the larger landscape, but draw attention to what Facebook's role is in this larger canvas. From the very early days of the web in the 1990s, both in the Indian context and among global Indian communities online, including here in Silicon Valley, where I live and work, the Hindu right has weaponized cyberspace to propagate its supremacist ideology known to demonize minorities and to promote a dubious and factually inaccurate version of Indian history. This supremacist ideology known as Hindutva or Hindu nationalism, which closely resembles white supremacy and Islamism in many aspects, rejects both Indian traditions of religious pluralism and the constitutionally enshrined Indian state value of secularism. Hindu supremacism claims that India should belong to Hindus alone, that the Indian state should protect the rights only of Hindus, and that Muslim and Christian Indians are outsiders who do not belong to India. Accompanying these core beliefs is a whole set of dangerous and vile stereotypes about minorities as descendants of violent invaders, as groups that lack loyalty to India, and as communities that are engaged in conspiracies to undermine Hinduism through religious conversion. Now, since the 1990s, the internet has been a hospitable space and an extremely handy tool for the Hindu right to promote and amplify Hindu supremacist ideology. In the 1990s and 2000s, these themes were seen on countless websites dedicated to the Hindu right cause, as well as on listservs and discussion forums, many of which I was part of, and I studied at some point of time over 500 of these websites. Muslims in particular were routinely described as violent, treasonous, terrorists, and they were accused of perpetrating holocausts and genocides against Hindus from time immemorial. This pervasive online narrative laid the groundwork for the next stage of online anti-minority hate in the era of social media platforms. Misinformation on Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, and attacks by a well-organized Hindu right apparatus were instrumental in generating support for Mr. Modi in 2014. With the election of the BJP-led government and the ascendancy of Mr. Modi to the Indian Prime Ministership in 2014, it is not an exaggeration to say that Hindu supremacism has become the de facto ideology of the Indian state. Social media has been key to this project, which rests on the denigration and exclusion of Indian minorities in practically all spheres of Indian social life. Additionally, since 2014, platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, and Twitter, as my colleagues have pointed out, have played a clear and fundamental role in enabling violence against Indian minorities, particularly Muslims, but also Christians and Dalits. They have enabled targeted campaigns of harassment, violence, and abuse against prominent minority voices, like the Bollywood actor Amir Khan. They have been instrumental in the organized online intimidation of courageous journalists like Rana Ayub, who had investigated serious allegations of murder against India's now Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah. They have provided a habitat for troll farms that are employed by the Hindu right that shut down ordinary voices that are critical of Mr. Modi, the BJP, or the Hindu right. And WhatsApp has been the preferred tool for planting and spreading rumors that have led to the lynching of Muslims in India. All of this is extensively documented in reports and in articles in a range of global publications, including the New York Times, The Guardian, Wired, Vice, and The Atlantic. Mr. Modi, likewise, is known to follow some of the worst, most abusive trolls on social media and to friend them on Facebook or Twitter. And perhaps the fact that he follows these figures is the reason why none of them, or the vast majority of them, have not been shut down despite clearly violating Facebook and Twitter's own professed standards. So the response of platforms, including Facebook, has been grossly inadequate, tantamount to deliberate and cynical inaction that has cost lives. Hiding behind the fig leaves of free speech and neutrality, the platforms have, for the most part, refused to take action against violent, abusive, and hateful content and speech by Hindu right-wing voices, organizations, and those associated with the BJP. Yet critics of the Hindu right have been shut down on the slightest pretexts, suggesting that the platforms essentially do the bidding of the Hindu right in India. While Facebook has hired fact checkers in India, as a recent article noted, I think in the Wall Street Journal, they do not necessarily act to remove the false information flagged by these fact checkers. Facebook's refusal to act for the longest time in response to deeply discriminatory anti-Muslim remarks by its former India policy head Anki Das is but one example of how the company enables and platforms hate. Moving towards concluding my remarks, in defending their actions or lack of them, social media and online platforms often plead helplessness, claiming they are bound by Indian laws or local laws generally. Yet this is just another excuse, as their actions are conveniently inconsistent and align with two objectives. First, not running afoul of the Hindu right in India, and second, not risking loss of access to the large Indian market. Last week, an Indian Muslim cricketer, Mohammad Shami, was savagely abused on social media after the Indian cricket team lost to the Pakistan cricket team, with Hindu right-wing trolls accusing him of throwing the match out of loyalty to Pakistan. This week, when the Indian cricket team captain Virat Kohli condemned the trolls, the Hindu right-wing trolls, he became their target, with Hindu supremacists threatening his 10-month-old daughter with rape. No social media platform has taken any action against the accounts from which threats against either Mr. Shami or Mr. Kohli have been issued. In conclusion, it is not hyperbole to state that in the Indian context, social media platforms already have blood on their hands. The platforms do have the power to make change. BJP leaders were rattled when Twitter deplatformed Mr. Donald Trump. Facebook, arguably more than others, is responsible, given that WhatsApp is part of the same family and has been directly implicated in lynchings of Muslims. It is extremely urgent that these platforms do not be allowed to contribute to more violence in the Indian context, whether against the most precarious and vulnerable Indian communities, or indeed against anyone who runs afoul of their supremacist politics. Thank you.